Welcome to the Visual Storytelling Podcast. My name is Fred Ranger, and I'm so happy that you're joining us this week for a very special episode of the podcast. I have a very special guest with me. His name is Roesch. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Maybe I'm butchering it. We'll ask him. Ritchie is a photographer from Salt Lake City, but he's mostly known for the great work he's been doing on a certain app and a website that you might know about. It's called Fuji X Weekly, and I've been a big fan of the work he's been doing over the past few years. So, Ritchie, first of all, thank you so much for being on a podcast with me today.
Well, thank you for having me on, Fred. It's a real honor.
So, Ritchie, let's dive right into it. You say on your website that you are a part-time hobby photographer and that you're not a pro, but you wouldn't call yourself amateur. What are you, Ritchie, outside of a great app developer and a community builder around the Fujifilm ecosystem? So let's talk about your photography first. How did you become a photographer?
Well, it's a long story, and I don't want to bore your listeners with all the details, but when I was right after high school graduation, but before I started my freshman year of college, I went on an epic road trip and borrowed my dad's 35 millimeter Sears camera. Thought I knew how to operate it and shot a whole bunch of rolls of film. When I got back home, I was excited, took them to the 1 hour photo lab. And of course, you remember when that was actually a thing.
Yep.
But when they came back, they were just completely awful. Not in focus, overexposed, underexposed. They were just absolutely ridiculous. And I was so disappointed that when college rolled around for one of the classes, I enrolled in Photography 101 because I thought, I should learn how to actually take a picture. And that's where it all started. I fell in love with photography and just been doing it ever since. Coming up on 25 years. It's hard to believe I'm that old, but
wow.
But I am. So I guess I need to update my website a little bit. I was living in Salt Lake City. I recently moved to Phoenix, Arizona.
Nice.
So it's a little bit warmer climate. And also, I was a part-time hobby photographer, but now I am full-time doing the Fuji X Weekly stuff. Fuji X Weekly, the Ricoh recipes, which is basically the same thing but for Ricoh GR, and the RitchieCam iPhone app.
Yeah, so let's talk about that because most people will know you for the work you've done on Fuji X Weekly, and I will admit, when I first heard about Fuji X Weekly, I was like, wait a second, I've been spending all those years using the default Fujifilm recipe or Fujifilm film simulation. And wait, there's a whole other ecosystem that just unlocked in front of my eyes. And I started dialing in those recipes. And I'm like, holy crap, this is a revolution. So talk to me a little bit about the thought process that led you to develop this great community and website and now app.
Yeah, so to go back to, I learned on film and I shot film for a long time. And I was one of those digital holdouts that, digital had been around a while and everybody was using it, but I was like, no, I'm sticking with film. It wasn't until I believe it was 2009, I got my first digital camera, and it was a Pentax SLR. And the reason I went with Pentax was because I had a Pentax film camera and the lenses were compatible with the digital camera. They had the same K-mount lenses, so I could just use the lenses I had, but I never was happy with the system, and I went from system to system like a lot of people do. Was using Nikon for a little while, Samsung, if you remember when they were making mirrorless cameras.
Yep. Didn't last that long though.
No, they didn't. I did Sigma, if you remember.
Yep.
The Foveon sensor.
Wow.
But I, like a lot of people, I took the advice of shooting raw and raw editing, right? That's, if you're going to do it, that's what you got to do. And you still see that advice being given to this day, which is good advice. It's not bad advice. But I eventually rolled into the Fujifilm system via used XE1. I wanted to try, just the manual controls, and I really liked the camera, and so I got a X100F.
Mm-hmm.
And when I set up the camera, I set it up to be RAW plus JPEG, and at the time I was using Alien Skin exposure software to RAW edit. And the reason is they have like film presets that you can get quickly kind of a film-like look from your files without having to fiddle too much with it. So I was using it to speed up my workflow to kind of get a film-like look. And I had edited a series of pictures I had taken early on with the X100F. And then when I compared it to the JPEGs that the camera made, I realized they were not that far apart. They were pretty close, and I thought, if I just tweak this JPEG settings a little bit, I bet I could get it even closer. And that's what I did, and that's how the film simulation recipes started, was just that I noticed the JPEG that came straight out of the camera looked a lot like the raw file that I edited, and I thought, why am I spending all this time editing these raw pictures when I can let the camera do it for me? And to say that it changed my life is not an understatement. It really did. It freed up so much time that allowed me to be a lot more productive with my photography, to have more time for blogging and creating apps and all that stuff. But I'm also I'm not sacrificing the image quality, because that's the main complaint a lot of people have about straight out of camera JPEGs, is that, well, it's the quality is going to degrade, so I want to shoot raw to get that higher quality. Well, with Fujifilm cameras in particular, the JPEG output is really, really good, and it comes out looking like it was raw edited, or looking like it was even a film picture when it isn't.
Tell me the truth. Have you shot raw since that day that you're like, man, I don't have to shoot raw anymore? And why? Why did you shoot raw afterwards? Okay,
so technically speaking, well, for a while I did go pure JPEG, just I'm shooting JPEG and that's it. And I did that for a little while, and then I realized that the process for creating new recipes is so much easier when you shoot raw. So I have my camera set up to be raw plus JPEG, and I can then reprocess the raw file in camera. A lot of people use XRAW Studio. I don't personally use XRAW Studio, but I do it all on camera, and I can then tweak it and apply a tweak and see how that looks, and apply another tweak and see how that looks, and it makes creating new recipes very easy. But I haven't, outside of reprocessing a file in camera, I haven't raw edited any picture in probably a couple of years now.
Wow. So that's the photographer, the busy photographer dream, not having to open Lightroom, those sliders, add grain, remove this, remove that. I think you've actually helped thousands of photographers to be more efficient, especially for photographers that are not necessarily, product photographers and pros that need to like tweak very, very precisely things up, and of course a plethora of film photographer that, film is great, but I was looking at the price. I literally was just looking up some price up on especially here in Canada. I mean, $25 a roll, $31 a roll. Like this is just insane. I mean, I have a Leica M6 that's sitting here, and I'm treating myself when I'm shooting film. Like I've done good this week. I'm gonna shoot a roll of film. Like it's a reward now. It should not be that way, but I guess it is what it is, right?
Yeah, am I going to have a nice dinner out, or am I going to shoot a roll of film?
Exactly, and I'm explaining to my kids that private school won't be possible because Dad wants to shoot film. No, I'm just kidding. But all that being said, so for me again, I think you mentioned it. There's a aha moment. There's a eureka moment where you're like, wow, okay, I can do this with those cameras. What is the importance of Fujifilm as a camera brand for you personally? Because I know for me, I was like you. I was shooting Nikon, was happy with shooting Nikon. And then I went on a trip to Italy and I brought my D700, which I still believe is one of the best camera that Nikon has ever made with that D3 sensor. Anyways, I brought the camera, the 10 to 24, 24 to 70, 70 to 200. And I brought a new little guy along the trip, which was back then the Fujifilm X, actually was called the FinePix 100, X100, the original one. And I got back from the trip, loaded my photos in Lightroom with all the cars I had. And I'm like, holy crap, I shot 85% of my photos with that camera. Why? Because it was so small, because it was so available. I had it on me, and the quality of the photos, even back then, 12, 13 years ago, was there. So for how would you describe how Fujifilm, for you as a camera brand, influenced the way you looked at cameras and what you can do with them?
Yeah, so the XE1 was my introduction to Fujifilm, as I said earlier, and the reason I was attracted to Fujifilm and that camera was the manual dials, and that I learned on film with completely manual. My first camera was a Canon AE1, and so that's the kind of stuff that I shot with, just fully manual SLRs. And the in rangefinders, and the Fujifilm cameras look like that, and they operate very similarly to that. So it felt a lot like coming home, just the controls of it. And I didn't even realize right away the color science, the JPEG quality, or anything like that right away. It took a while to actually realize what I had. And realize what Fujifilm had done. And what I really appreciate about their film simulations and their camera settings and all that stuff is that they involve the film crew, the group of people within Fujifilm that actually develops and works on the film.
Yeah.
They involved them in the digital side of it to make the JPEGs look more film-like than they otherwise would.
That is so true, and I think this is what makes this company so unique. Because if you're Sony, and nothing against Sony or any other camera brands, you don't have that luxury of tapping into 80 years of building different emulsion and film and color and black and white and so on and so forth. So I think you're bang on. This is they went to their core DNA, which they were a film company back then, and they built on that DNA. And we were talking pre-show about marketing. Although they might not be the best at marketing, they sure know how to talk about the DNA of the company and the way they innovate through it. So I think this is what makes this company so unique, and this is why people like you and I are drawn to going from, because that's also a conversation, full frame to APS-C. Even in 2023, there's still people debating, oh no, I need that full frame look, I need some whatever BS. No, you don't need a full frame look. If you think you need the full frame look, maybe it's because you need to upgrade your skills or the way you shoot. You can do with Micro Four Third, you can do some great stuff too. You're talking about Ricoh, those little camera that you put in your pocket. You can take amazing pictures. So I think the debate is now done and off. Although some people like to fight in the comments.
Yeah.
But I guess that's,
you would think the debate is over.
Well, you would think, but then it's the internet, it's YouTube, it's Twitter. It's people like to have an opinion. But I won't get started on that. I would rather go back to the fact that you brought so much to the community. Talk to me about the community aspect, because we talk about the technical stuff. You've designed so many great recipes. Now you have people helping also and providing their take on the recipes. But what about the community aspect of it? So many people exchanging on or building on what you've offered, through the blog and through the website. So how important was that when you thought about developing that new idea?
So yeah, that's a very important thing you're bringing up here, because the community has been critical and essential to, I think, not only Fujifilm success, but Fuji X Weekly's success. And when I started the Fuji X Weekly blog, I said, I love to write and I love to photograph. And even if nobody comes, I'm still going to do it because it's what I love to do. And I was surprised by how quickly the community found it and embraced it and shared it. And it's grown very organically. We did talk about marketing pre-show, and that's something that, I'm learning a little bit and I'm not very good at personally. And I did almost zero marketing for the first few years of Fuji X Weekly, but it still grew and grew and grew. And it was because of the community, the people who embrace Fujifilm and embrace Fuji X Weekly recipes, or just the film simulations in general. They're largely very, very wonderful people, very good, kind-hearted people who are just excited to share this passion that they have. And so you have these people that are using the recipes, telling their friends, using Fujifilm and telling their friends, writing about it, making videos about it, and all that kind of stuff. And it's just blown my mind of how far it's come. And what I want to say is, as the website has grown and grown and grown, there's obviously been a much bigger reach. And when you go to photography websites and you go to the comment section, or you go to photography forums or stuff like that, you'll see a whole lot of negativity.
Yeah.
Just a whole bunch of negativity that's on there. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think a lot of people blame the gear for their own shortcomings, instead of saying, well, people did so much more with so much less. How come I'm not?
Yeah.
Right. And they can improve themselves and use that as an opportunity to improve themselves. But going back to the community, is there's just so much less negativity. Yeah, a little bit creeps in here and there, but there's just so much less negativity found within the Fujifilm community, the Fuji X Weekly community, especially. It just blows my mind of how good the community, the people who are using these recipes or using Fujifilm cameras, it's really good people. And obviously I owe them a whole bunch of thanks for the support and everything that they have given. And it's a real honor to be able to help them in their photography by, providing them film simulation recipes and so forth.
At some point I was like, okay, this is a video about a Fujifilm camera. At some point in the video, I'm sure the YouTuber, and I'm guilty of that myself, will mention, oh, thanks to Ritchie, because he reignited my love for photography, because I like shooting film and film is expensive or whatever, or I didn't know my Fujifilm camera could do this, and have such great JPEGs and so on. So I want to personally thank you for helping me and thousands of people with rediscovering literally sometimes the gear they already had, and take it to new heights and try new stuff. I am publishing right now a series, and I know I'm tagging you on that one, but it's just photos that I've taken at the beach, and that Portra 400 V2, holy crap, it's just the perfect film.
I love that recipe. Yeah.
Oh man, did you develop it, or was it a contributor?
Yes.
Okay.
So there was somebody who shared with me their Portra film scans, and I worked to match that look as best I could, and get pretty darn close. And then we were able to actually shoot with the recipe together, and
nice.
And it was a lot of fun to do that. But it was actually the original Portra 400 recipe. It was actually a collaboration as well, with somebody who took Portra. So one isn't necessarily more accurate to the film than the other. It's just, since one film can produce so many different aesthetics depending on how it was handled, that both of them both recipes produce a slightly different look, but both match Portra just depending on whose photographs you're talking about.
I completely agree, and I've tried both. I mean, my heart is with the V2, and again, this is the beauty of it. And let's talk about the app, because this is something I discovered. I mean, I was a big fan of the website, but I started using the app while I was traveling. I mean, we mentioned I travel a lot, so sometimes you don't have access to a computer, or you don't have access to the internet at all. So having that app, right on my phone, being able to dial in, this is the sensor I'm using, and having the filters and so on. So was that something that you already had in mind when you started the Fuji X Weekly website, or is that something you're like, hey, let's go mobile, because everybody has a phone, and you might reach more people through that technology?
Well, the original idea was actually my wife's. Her name's Amanda, and she uses a Fujifilm camera too. She does some portrait photography and stuff like that. So, but she's like, your recipes would be great for an app. And then I had a couple different people contact me, and they said that they thought that would also be good for an app, but it wasn't going to work out for various reasons. One of the big reasons is that app development costs a lot of money. So if you're going to hire somebody to develop an app for you, that might be $25,000 to $100,000, or a lot of money. And I was like, no, I don't have the money to spend on something like that, first of all. But then this guy named Sahan, he used to work for Apple, and he has his own apps. He's an app developer. He reached out to me, and he says, I use your recipes. Love Kodak Portra 400. He likes V2, but his favorite is actually the other one, and he does portrait photography like professionally, and he does some product photography, and he's a talented photographer, but a very talented app developer. And he said, let's partner on this, and let's do it, and it just worked out like perfect. I mean, just really, really well. And so the two of us worked together to get the Fuji X Weekly app out on Apple, and then we've got it on an Android. And then when we did the Rico recipe app, we launched them both on Apple and Android simultaneously. And then we worked on the RitchieCam iPhone app together. And that was a big project that took nearly a year from start to actually releasing it. And when we released it, it wasn't even what we wanted it to be, but it was like, okay, we got to get this out and then update it over time to what we want it to be, because it was just such a big project. Yeah, man, it's just a competitive space too, right? You type photo apps in the App Store, and there's hundreds, literally, of photo apps in there. So you have to have something unique, and I think for you, it's already unique by design, right? There's not a lot of other potential competitors, at least yet, in the App Store. Well, the idea behind it, because there's apps that are out there that unlock your phone's potential, right? That you can set it up to be like your DSLR or whatever, mirrorless or f-stop, whatever it is. You can control everything, and it gives you full control. Or there's ones that apply filters to make it fun or whatever. But there didn't seem to be any that were like just easy to use, like even your grandma or your kids could use it without even thinking twice about it. But also had or produced looks that you would be proud to share as a photographer on your Instagram or whatever. So it was kind of, I saw that gap, and I wanted to fill it, and hopefully the app does that. That's the intention anyway. Wow. But an interesting story is there was an actor, a Hollywood actor, who reached out to me, and he says, I love the RitchieCam app. I found it in the App Store, and I think it's great. And we started chatting, and then he's like, wait a minute, are you the Fuji X Weekly guy? Oh, okay. So I'm like, double fan. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I am the Fuji X Weekly guy, And he's like, I didn't even realize you guys were one and the same. I didn't know RitchieCam was part of Fuji X Weekly, but he shoots Fujifilm cameras, and he uses the film simulation recipes, and he had the Fuji X Weekly app on his phone. It didn't realize it was, by the same person. The RitchieCam app was by the same person as Fuji X Weekly. He just happened to find it in in the App Store.
Wait. Did you say that there's a Hollywood actor who's not shooting on a Leica? Is that what you're saying?
No, yeah, no. He shoots Fujifilm, and
I'm just kidding.
it's he has a show on Netflix, and
Cool.
yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Well, like I said, you really identified a need, for photographers to be able to unlock their creativity and write in the camera. I think this is where you were very smart about it, and the rest is history. So, but talking about your own photography, because we keep talking about people's favorite recipes and so on and so forth. But what are you driven by? What makes you happy when you pick up your camera and go out and shoot?
Yeah, I don't have like a certain like genre of photography that I like stick to. I will photograph anything, but I try and look for the things that other people are overlooking. The simple things, kind of like the trash on the highway or whatever. All the stuff that other people might pass by 100 times and not think twice about it. And I try and find some sort of beauty in the trash can or whatever it is, and my family has long called this a Ritchie picture, but it's just that simplicity. I also like urban exploration, going into like abandoned places, but I don't get to do that nearly often enough. Love landscape photography, especially just being in a beautiful location like Yosemite or along the coast or something like that, But I don't specialize in anything, or I'm not pigeonholed in any genre or type or anything like that.
And what's your current camera default? Like what camera do you grab the most recently?
Well, recently it's been the X-T5. I bought the Fujifilm X-T5. I pre-ordered it on Amazon, and then there was a whole fiasco with Amazon, so I had to cancel that pre-order. And I went to a local camera store, and they had one, so I picked up the X-T5. And there's some things about it that I'm on the fence about, but overall, I really like the camera. I've been using it a lot. After that, it's the X100V. That's like my desert island camera. Like if I could only have one, that's the one it would be. And then I use the XE4. Yep. I like the XE. I've always liked the XE line, and kind of for something smaller, simpler, lighter, that's a good one to grab. And that's mostly what I've been shooting with lately. Yeah,
I mean, I think was it you who said I think I just spent $1,700 just to get access to the new sensor and build my recipe. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it was the nostalgic negative film simulation.
Yeah, there you go.
I wanted to get my hands on that and start seeing if I liked it, see what I could create with it. I was very curious about it. I love doing that. I love the art of creating these film simulation recipes. And
how do you like the nostalgic neg? How do you like the nostalgic neg film sim?
I like it. I think it has a lot in common with Eterna.
Okay, so desaturated.
If your camera if somebody out there, they have a Fujifilm camera and it has the Eterna film simulation, nostalgic negative is not that far off from Eterna. It's a little bit warmer. It has some more contrast, and it's more vibrant. Is the difference?
Yeah.
And probably the biggest difference actually is that it's warmer in the shadows.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
But otherwise, you can get pretty close to the same exact look of it with Eterna.
Do you have a lot of new recipes based on that nostalgic neg film set?
Yeah, I could tell you.
Yeah, because there's a filter.
I have the Fuji X Weekly app in my hands. I know your audience cannot see that, and I can choose to filter by film simulation, and I'm choosing nostalgic negative, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6.
Wow. Okay, that's
so. Good. And there'll be more that'll come out, but yeah. So I've been having a lot of fun with that. I'm not sure that if somebody is out there and they're wanting to use the nostalgic negative film simulation, but they're not sure, is it worth the price? Is it worth $1,700 to upgrade? I wouldn't spend that much money just for the film simulation.
Yeah.
But but if you're looking for other things, maybe if you have like an XT3, and I know your audience isn't just Fujifilm shooters, so I don't want to get too bogged down in all that. But if they have like an XT3, which doesn't save the white balance shift with the presets,
Yeah.
which can be annoying, it might be worth the upgrade just for that reason. Be able to save the white balance shift with each preset. But you would get classic negative. I love classic negative. I like classic negative more than nostalgic negative.
Same here.
If we're ranking them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been using a lot that film sim since it came out, and now on my XH2S, I have a little recipe. Maybe I'll send it to you. I tweaked one of your recipe, and I'm liking what I'm seeing. So maybe I'll send it to you, and I use it for video. That's the other thing we haven't talked about is that those film recipes, you can use them in other settings than just taking photos. There's so many things you can tweak on those recent models of Fujifilm cameras. You mentioned the white balance and so on and so forth. That is. Again, something you cannot really do on other brands. I mean, you have a Ricoh recipe T-shirt, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about what you can do with those Ricoh cameras. But definitely Fujifilm, the recent cameras, there's so many things you can tweak and then save into a custom settings. My XH2S has 7 custom settings, and it even saves like different button layout and so on and so forth. So we've come a long way since the XE1 you were mentioning, or my X100 that you had the settings were on the camera and that's it. But let's talk about Ricoh. I mean, this is a new edition, if I'm not mistaken, right? So that wasn't launched at the same time as Fuji X Weekly, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's been out a little while now, but maybe a year and a half ago is when I did launch the Ricoh recipes, and it's basically the same thing as the Fuji X Weekly recipes, but for Ricoh cameras. Their approach and their color science is a little different. They don't have film simulations, but they have effects, and they're kind of the same thing, just different name. And so you can get different various looks out of the Ricoh GR camera straight out of camera, similar to Fujifilm, but it's different looks because their color science is different and their approach is different. But for those who want something very pocketable, travel, do street photography with, that kind of thing, but don't want to have to fuss with editing raw pictures and that kind of stuff. It's an excellent option, a different way to use the Ricoh GR. If you're out doing street photography and you capture 200 pictures while you're out, walking the streets, well, you could sit at a computer and edit those 200 pictures, or, if you shot with a recipe, then they're already finished. You just gotta, upload them to Instagram or whatever, and you're done.
Yeah.
So
what was it? Was it the positive film effect or something like that? That's pretty close. Well, close. Depends on how you see it, but that's closer to the film look that everybody's trying to go for.
Yeah. So the positive film is it's not the same as like classic chrome, but it would be the closest thing on a Ricoh GR to classic chrome on Fujifilm. It does have kind of a film-like quality to it and stuff. So. Definitely more like Kodak inspired, I guess, without being a copy of any Kodak film, And
is your heart still with Fujifilm when it comes to what you can do?
Absolutely.
Ricoh's not close.
I think especially the newer Fujifilm cameras have just so many great options, and the looks are great, and I love the grain and all that kind of stuff. I think also the experience of the manual dials and all that stuff. Not just the quality of the JPEGs, but the quality of the experience.
I tried using the Ricoh GR, the Ricoh GR3. Was working for a month or two, but I was always going back to my X100. I don't know. There's something about shooting. It felt like shooting on a phone because it's just a screen. I know you can put a viewfinder on it, but then it becomes defeats the purpose of having the pocketable. So I'm ready to live with No skinny jeans for me because I want to be able to put my X100 in my pocket. So, but the Ricoh GR, great camera, great sensor. It has image stabilization, and this is all great. And now that you have, I didn't know about Ricoh Recipe to be honest. So now I'm going to put that link also in the show notes for all of those Ricoh shooters that want to experience the same type of looks that we're getting on the Fuji side. Speaking of Fuji, what's next, do you think, for Fuji? Because they had so many new cameras. They now have a video focused camera with the XH2S. They have the XH2 that's 40 megapixel, the XT5. I think they've came a long way, because I don't know, it was just like maybe 5-6 years ago, they weren't even thinking about video. I mean, the cameras could do video, but they were not there. So what do you think's next for that company that you know so well, because you're in those menus day in and day out? How can they do better? How can they evolve the system? And what do you think is their next move? I know you're not an official representative of Fujifilm, but you have a view on the company.
Yeah, so a lot of people are surprised that I've only talked to Fujifilm like a couple of times.
Okay.
Like ever.
Well, you should remind them,
like,
you sold a lot of cameras for them. A lot of people are like, oh, yeah, you know what? Let's buy a Fuji now that we know that there's recipes.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely a lot of people have told me, I mean, I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of people have told me I bought a Fujifilm camera because I wanted to use your recipes. Somebody showed me the recipes, and I went out and I bought a Fujifilm camera. So I know that it's happening, but yeah, Fujifilm, the times I have talked to them, they were very nice, and they were very open to listening and that kind of thing. So, but I am a little surprised that they don't come to me more often, since I have kind of a pulse on the community, or at least a big chunk of the community. And I kind of understand what their wants and complaints and desires and that kind of thing are. So I think I have a lot that I could offer them in that way, but kind of waiting for them to reach out. But as far as what I would like them to see them do, is I think what I would really like to see them do is embrace their traditions and embrace what makes them special, and really run with that. And I think that people are just now kind of, you see that with the X100V, and that you can't even find it anywhere. They're sold out before they even have manufactured them. There's such a desire. People are discovering what makes these cameras truly great, and it's the experience of using it, and also the quality of the images that you can get from it, and how it just can revolutionize your photography if you'll let it. And I think if they could focus more on that, and focus less on trying to emulate the competition and that kind of stuff, that they could really go much further. And that would be my advice to them if they do happen to listen to this podcast. But what I think is next is probably I have no inside information whatsoever. Again, I've only spoken to Fuji a couple times ever, but I think a new X100 series is probably coming soon. I don't know what they're going to call it, because the second one was X100S for second. The third one was X100T for third. The X100F was for fourth. And then the fifth one, they used the Roman numeral V for 5. So I don't know what I'm going with Z, X100Z. I don't know if that's... They do have some films that they've made in the past that had the Z at the end of it. I think it was their ISO 800 color films had a Z at the end.
Okay.
And Fuji Color 800Z or that kind of thing. But I think that's what they should name it, X100Z. And I think that maybe is what's coming next.
Yeah. So no X Pro 4. You don't think?
I think that's probably definitely in the works. I'm thinking, since they came out with 3 of the kind of the high end cameras, the XH2S, the XH2, and the XT5. I think maybe coming back a little bit into something that's more affordable for people is probably a good step. Maybe a X100Z or XT40 or XT50 or whatever they're going to call it.
Yeah.
And then maybe the X Pro 4, but I have no idea. It could be the X Pro 4 that's next. I have no idea.
And photography in general, I mean, every time I have somebody on the podcast, I'm always interested in understanding what's your perspective on where photography is going, because as we mentioned, very hard to make a living out of shooting still images. Like people are doing seven other things to make to pay the bills, like shooting movies and videos, and like doing YouTube or teaching workshops or trying to sell digital assets and so on and so forth, because it's so hard to be a photographer or heck a photojournalist in 20, like if there's people listening to this and you're at school and you're like, I'm going to be a photojournalist, well, I wish you luck and I wish you all the best, but man, it's going to be a hard entry into that world, because there's less and less photographers, there's less and less money, from magazines, and actually there's less and less magazines at the end of the day. And yes, there's digital, and but it's a completely different world out there versus in the past where you were a photographer or a press photographer. You could make a very decent living. So what's your view on the state of photography today and where it's going beyond 2023?
Well, I think there's more photographs being captured today than there was ever before, and I think that it kind of there used to be a saying that everyone's a photographer. I mean, I'm talking about like 10 years ago, people were saying that. Well, everybody's a photographer.
Yeah,
everybody's got a camera and trying to start up a photography business or whatever it is. But even more so now, and I think there's a kind of an oversaturation of the market, and so it is hard to be a successful full-time photographer with the pictures being what earn you the money. And people are doing it. It's possible. It's probably just as possible now as ever before, but it is stiff competition. Yeah. And I think and because of that, you're going to have to work twice as hard to be half as successful. But it is possible, I think. However, I believe that kind of if you're trying to make a living from your camera, you have to think about it differently and approach it differently, and not try and actually earn the money from the pictures, but from other ideas.
Exactly.
Using your knowledge or experience in some other fashion to actually pay the bills. And you see this a lot where people are hugely successful social media influencers, for example. Maybe you wouldn't classify them necessarily as quote unquote photographers, but they're making good money with their camera.
Yeah.
Or people doing workshops or YouTube videos or whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, you look at some people we have in common. Ritchie, who's a wedding photographer, who earns a living there, but also does YouTube, and at the end of the day, he's able to create an environment where he can also teach photography. And so I think it's to your point, people need to adapt, and we need to stop being romantic about photography. Again, if you want to make a living out of it, if you're like you and I, and it's mostly you don't earn money just by shooting photos, and you do other things to make your money, then it's a completely different ball game. If you want to go out and shoot all day long and not shoot for 3 months, it's okay, and focus on other things. Yep. If you're amateur, I don't know how to call that anymore, but people who are not, again, just making money with shooting stills. But it's an interesting world we're entering also with social media, right? So to your point, a lot of people, and I will say this with the most respect, but a lot of people have a lot of followers, but the followership is not necessarily representative of the quality of the work. Back then, and I'm not being romantic about the past. I'm totally into this looking forward motion, but it's just that things are changing. So back then, you had to have a tremendous amount of talent. I think, I don't know if you know the guy called Daniel Miner. Daniel Daniel Minor. And anyways, he was he works with Blurb now, and he was a photojournalist back then. And anyways, he talks a lot about these type of things. And I think what you're doing now with the app and with the film sim and giving people an extra reason to care about photography is in that movement of, hey, it's okay not to be a professional photographer, and you can call yourself a photographer. That the duality between, oh no, he's not a real photographer. No, we're in 2023. If I want to call myself a photographer and use Reggie's, film sim and share them with the world, and people like them and ask questions about them, and so I can call myself a photographer. We're not saving lives here. We're taking photos. But I understand it might be hard for people to be a professional and try to find their way into this. Some people have 500,000 subscribers. You look at their feed, it's okay, but they have a good personality and they know how to interact. So all that being said, what do you think about social media? I'm sure you are on it, you use it to promote your photography, to connect with your community, but what's your view on social media in photography, at least?
Yeah, I think that photography is kind of in a weird place on there, because Instagram used to be the place for photographers, but they've kind of moved away from that and more into video, which is fine. But it seems like photography is getting lost within it. But there's good opportunities for people to build a following and to get people to see their pictures that otherwise wouldn't, and that kind of thing. So I think the other side of it is that it can take up a lot of your time. It can make you envious, So I think there's good and bad in social media, and it kind of depends on how you use it. And I think sometimes people will say more is more, but I think less is more. And but an interesting thing, I saw an article not that long ago about that people are hiring social media influencers to photograph their weddings using their iPhones and stuff like that, right? Because they can get the pictures right away, and they can get the videos, the reels or the TikToks right away to share. And so I think that the movement, as photography moves into the future, as the days go on and stuff, what we're going to see more of is quick turnarounds. It's going to be like speed is more important than necessarily quote unquote quality. Mm-hmm. Not to say quality isn't important, but I think that if you can combine speed and quality, like if you're doing a wedding and you can deliver the pictures the next day, you've got a huge advantage over somebody who's going to take 2 weeks, because the people want their pictures. They're not patient, and they want to share them on social media on the day they wake up on their honeymoon or whatever. So I think if and that's where using the film simulation recipes and that kind of stuff could come in handy.
I was about to say, I think there's an app that can help people deliver files quicker, right?
Yeah, if you're editing, 500 raw photos, you're not going to be able to do it in the day, or you're going to quickly get burnt out. But if you're relying on the JPEGs, and you mentioned like Reggie's portrait recipe or something like that, my wife just did a portrait session with her Fujifilm X-T4, and she used that recipe, Reggie's portrait, and the pictures turned out absolutely wonderful. So, but it allows you to be able to do that quick turnaround, which gives you a leg up on the competition, and maybe that's a way somebody could find success in photography in the future.
In a way, I'm thinking about it like, could you imagine back then if, Ralph Gibson or whoever said to Soy Lighter, like, he's using like some cheap Kodak film. I'm using, Kodachrome or whatever. Like the people, though, they wouldn't say that. It's just that let people use what they want to use. And to your point, quick, speed will be a factor. I'm pushing the conversation a notch higher. And I want to talk about AI, because I mean you're now a tech guy. You're developing apps and providing software and to help people with their photography. what do you think about AI? I mean, right now, do I actually need a camera anymore? Do I need to put a film sim when I can ask an AI to do all that stuff? Right there.
Well, it's very interesting. I think it's crazy that you can speak or type into an AI and it'll come up with something that looks
Yeah.
pretty amazing, that you might even mistake it as a picture. But I think first of all, without the photographer, the AI wouldn't know what to make. First of all,
I like that.
like it has to have something to reference in order to create something. So the AI needs the photographer to be able to do that. And if there is no photographer, then the AI's current limit is all that it'll go to. But but I think the other part of it is that the vision of a photographer cannot be imagined or replicated by a machine unless it's somebody's already done it and they're copying it, basically.
Yeah.
So I think AI does have a place. I think it can be helpful in different aspects.
So do you see a world where your film recipes are being created by an AI? Is that something you even thought about at any point?
No, I think they probably could be. Like if you were to take, let's say, 10 pictures and put it in AI, and I don't know, I'm not savvy enough to know exactly how it works. I've never actually done it myself. But present the computer with 10 pictures and say, within the parameters that Fujifilm has,
Yep.
can you recreate this look? And then the computer figures out whatever. And maybe that is how it evolves. And I mean, I have no issues with that if it does, because maybe it could get even more accurate. But I think also at the same time, like a person, when they're making these, they're putting a bit of their soul into it, because they're deciding, does this look good?
Yes.
Right? Maybe this is more accurate, but if I do this, it actually looks better. So I think if you completely relied on AI, then you would lose that soul.
Yeah.
So I guess even if AI comes about, you have to have that balance of the human input. Else it'll just look very. I guess it would, like, if you think of digital photography as being very clinical or that kind of thing, AI will look very clinical and that kind of thing without the human aspect of it.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, and I think this is the main difference between, at least for now, because we don't know where AI will take us, but it's revolutionizing a lot of industries, and I'm sure photography will have to think about how it affects our world. But the goal is not to be against it. The goal is to your point, understand the differences, where we can still add value as humans. And the word soul, last time I checked, it was hard for an AI to perceive soul or understand soul or add soul. So I think you're bang on when you talk about that difference. But let's come back to Earth and to today's world, because the time is flying by, and I really want to understand what are your projects, Ritchie, because you've again provided so much value to the community for the past few years. But what's next for Ritchie, Rico Recipe, Fuji X Weekly, and so on and so forth? What are the big plans for the next few years?
Yeah. So one thing, I got a project I'm working on, and I can't talk a lot about it, but it's actually we'll see if it actually comes about. But I'm working with a company to actually produce a physical photo product.
Nice.
and I can't really give a lot of information. It's people hearing this, their imaginations might go wild at what that means, and it's not anything fancy or expensive or anything like that. It's not a camera, anything like that. But it is a actual.
There's images
physical,
that will be involved. That's what I'm understanding at some point.
So yes, so that's one thing I'm working on. I'm working, obviously, always making more film simulation recipes, especially when the new camera comes out.
Yeah.
I'm trying to adapt the older recipes for the newer camera right now. That's a big thing that I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But also trying not to forget the older cameras and that kind of stuff. So I have, I don't know how many Fujifilm cameras, probably 7, if I were to guess offhand. And each one has some sort of experimental recipe going on inside of it right now, and not all of those come about and end up on the website or app. Some are in the works for a while, takes a lot of tweaking and stuff, and then even at the end I'm like, no, I just don't like it. So but other ones do come out, and hopefully they're good and people enjoy them. But working on that, working on the RitchieCam, adding new features and stuff to that, trying to do all sorts of things with that. There's probably 7 or 8 things that are currently being worked on with that. Just improving the apps and all that kind of stuff. It takes a lot of time.
Yes,
but those are the things I'm doing, and then hopefully I'm hoping to be able to do more travel and incorporate Fuji X Weekly within that somehow. And I'm still working on that and trying to figure that out. But
nice.
Maybe that's something that might roll out over the summer.
Yeah, man, and please make sure to come by Canada and in Montreal.
Yeah.
And let's go out and shoot and document it and share with your great audience, my great audience, and I think people will appreciate it. You mentioned old cameras. I think this is something we haven't talked about, but favorite sensor, and regardless of specs and technology and megapixel, is there one sensor in the whole history that you're like, that sensor is unique and it's my preferred one, not necessarily the latest one, but because it has that soul that you were talking about?
Well, a lot of people appreciate the X-Trans 2 sensor for that, but I actually, probably the unpopular opinion, X-Trans 4 is my favorite sensor so far. And again, that may be very unpopular with people, but that's just what I think.
Yeah.
If we're talking about all digital cameras, I really love like the Foveon sensor, the mirror cameras, the Sigma mirror cameras, but the process for getting a good picture from that is insane. Yeah. And I didn't like, while I liked the output, I didn't like the process. The process was just absolutely miserable, but the images were beautiful. So
when you know,
so that would probably be my favorite
for that sensor. It was beautiful. I agree. Cool stuff. So Ritchie, where can people? I mean, I'll put all the links down below. But what is the main platform? I'm sure a lot of our listeners know about it, but some people might be new to the whole Fuji X Weekly ecosystem. So where can they find more information about the platform, the projects, and yourself?
Yeah, so FujiXweekly.com. That's the big website that has all the Fujifilm stuff. You can also find me on Instagram, Fuji X Weekly, Instagram.com/Fuji X Weekly, on TikTok, Facebook. I also have Ritchie Roesch, RitchieRoeschie.com. And from there, you can find the links to RitchieCam, Rico recipes, Fuji X Weekly, and all that stuff. So nice. That's the best place to find me, I think.
Awesome. And I really want to thank you, for two things. First, for being on this podcast and doing this with me. I really appreciate your time. And secondly, on behalf of Fujifilm users, for all the effort and time you've put in over the past years and giving us so many cool film recipes and content to read and to reignite our passion for those little cameras that we like to use day in and day out. So Ritchie, I want to say thank you so much.
Thank you, Fred.
So I've been Fred Ranger, and I invite you to go see the show notes where you'll find all the links that we talked about. And also, if you want to give us a 5-star review in the App Store, I will really appreciate it. And on behalf of Ritchie, myself, please have a great rest of your day. Cheers.